You know those people who always end up on the wrong side of history? Yeah, me neither. Actually, scratch that. Here's one. Ancient Greek philosophers. Okay, some of them were pretty great. Plato was all right, but he went a bit overboard with the whole immortality thing. Socrates was cool until he got put to death for being an annoying question-asking little. But then there was Aristotle, that guy who still has way too much influence on people who don't understand him. But today we're talking about two guys who didn't get nearly enough credit. Democritus and his lesser-known buddy Leucippus sat in Abdera, Greece, probably after a heavy dose of olives, and declared, "There are tiny, invisible particles we can't see, and they make up everything." They called them atoms, meaning uncuttable. And they didn't stop there, they added. These atoms move in a void. Wait, what? They even believed that atoms combined and separated to make the world around us. Sounds a lot like Lego science, right? Except these guys were doing it 2,000 years before Lego was invented. They also had an even wilder theory, something that would make them unpopular with most of their fellow Greeks. Part 2. No gods needed. 2 o'clock to 3:30. Now hear the spicy bit. They said, the universe didn't need gods. That's right. While the rest of the world was offering goats to sky gods, Democritus was out here saying, it's just atoms and empty space. Deal with it. You could fit all the gods in the universe inside an atom, because there was no such thing as divine intervention, no supernaturally perfect order. There was just this, atoms, random, eternal, uncreated, indestructible, indivisible. They moved around, sometimes bumping into each other and sticking together, which made bigger pieces of stuff. Sometimes they'd fly apart again. Everything was a combination and recombination of these atoms. So if you wanted to figure out how stuff worked, you just needed to learn the rules of the game, how these atoms interacted, not beg a god for help. This was ancient atheism, and it was radical, like Hydra philosopher level radical. Even more radical than that, though, was the idea that those same atoms made humans. Humans weren't special. Our bodies were just arrangements of these tiny bits. And when we died, our atoms would go back into the universal Lego box, getting built into other people, plants, rocks, hot dogs. Nothing was sacred. Nothing was off limits. The universe worked by rules. Well, those rules applied to everything and everybody. In fact, those rules applied even after you died. Part 3. Death. Just a cosmic reboot to 3:30 to 5 o'clock. Democritus had a very chill attitude toward death. He believed that when you die, your body's atoms don't disappear, they just get recycled into other things. Today you're a human, tomorrow you're a banana. Honestly, it's poetic. Forget reincarnation, you are reassembly. When the living breathe, their atoms came from the dead. We're all just walking graveyards of recycled matter. Even the soil we walk on was made of atoms from dead things. Guess, the whole cycle of life and death was just atoms combining and splitting apart. The only real change was when you stopped breathing, when your body stopped arranging its atoms into you. After that, your atoms became part of something else. No soul floating to heaven, no burning in hell, no divine judgment, just atoms moving on. It's the ultimate return to sender policy. And that brings us to the thing that really makes Democritus stand out. Part 4. Way ahead of their time, 5 o'clock to 6:30. Let us fast forward now to the 1800s. Science was in its infancy, but it was starting to find its legs. Enter John Dalton, the man considered to be the father of modern atomic theory. What do you think he proposed? All matter's made of atoms? J.J. Thomson, another 19th century scientist, discovered electrons and realized that atoms could be broken into even smaller pieces. Quantum physics, the stuff that explains how the universe works at the smallest possible level, was born. The Greeks didn't have microscopes or particle accelerators, yet they had the basic idea down. Democritus and Leucippus were doing theoretical physics in togas. We should be naming labs after them, not salad dressings. The thing is, though, while they were onto something huge, they didn't have the tools to prove it. They couldn't show the world that atoms existed. They couldn't figure out what exactly atoms were. They were laughed at for their ideas. Leucippus even said that if atoms were real, why didn't they pile up over time? And that's a really good question, actually. It's called the accumulation problem, and scientists were scratching their heads over it until Einstein rolled around and figured out that time was unabsolute and relativity was a thing. Without understanding calculus, without any of the math needed to really explore the idea. The Greek philosophers basically did what they could with the tools they had. They had philosophy, logic, and a little bit of imagination. Oh yeah, and they had one of the most counterintuitive ideas about reality ever. Now imagine explaining this to somebody. Hey, let's say I told you that the world as you knew it was real, that everything you saw, felt, smelled, heard, tasted was just atoms clicking together like Legos. How do you test that? How do you show somebody that the chair they're sitting on is really just wood atoms pretending to be a chair? You can't. They're going to need proof. So now let's add another mind-blowing twist. I tell them that when they die, their bodies will turn into other things. Their atoms will become part of a new person or a mango tree. What do you think they'll say? Probably something along the lines of, "Take me back to my comfortable ignorance. I don't want to know about this. I'm going to keep eating my delicious ignorance casserole." It's where Democritus and Leucippus started. People didn't want to hear their ideas. They were too strange, too different from what people thought they knew to be true. In a world full of myths and magic and monsters, the idea that everything was just atoms moving around was absolutely bonkers. Yet it was also completely true, and that's why we love it. Part 5. The Legacy. 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Atomism didn't just explain matter, it kicked off the entire scientific worldview, it said. Back then, people explained stuff happening in the world with stories. There was a story for why the sky was blue, a story for why lightning struck, a story for why kids shouldn't eat spinach.
Oh.
And every story pointed to a god or gods pulling strings. Democritus and Leucippus said, "Screw the strings. Everything happens because of interactions between these tiny things we can't see." And they were right. Today, scientists are figuring out what exactly those interactions look like. We've gone from everything is made of atoms. 2 atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Electrons act like waves and particles, and sometimes they tunnel through barriers that they shouldn't be able to pass through. And string theory might unify quantum mechanics and gravity once we figure out the math behind it. We're still working on it, but we're working on it in the open. Anyone can join in and contribute to our understanding of how the universe works. All we need is curiosity and evidence. We don't need myths or magic. So the next time you hear somebody say, "Well, obviously, about how the universe works," remember Democritus and Leucippus? They didn't know much about how the universe works, but they had the courage to say, "We don't know, but we can start figuring it out." They were the OG nerds, and we owe them a big thanks. They were 2 barefoot Greek philosophers who looked up at the sky and asked, "What if?" And that's how they changed the world. Speaking of changing the world, what if you could change your body composition by just standing on a scale and waiting a few minutes? Yeah, I didn't think so.